Welcome to The Smart Divorce on Divorce Source Radio, helping you move forward with focus, hope, and confidence, saving you time, money, and your sanity as you build a better life post-divorce. I'm Steve Peck. Deborah Moskovich, divorce consultant, educator, and author of The Smart Divorce, brings you the leading experts and researchers in the divorce arena. We'll also speak with those in the trenches, people who've learned from their divorce and how their experience has changed their lives. And they would tell you for the better. Divorce can be a beginning, even if it looks like an end, and rich in opportunity to learn and grow from. And on the Smart Divorce Radio Show, we'll explore how to create a positive outlook post-divorce life. And now, here's Deborah.
It is. Here it is. How are you today, Steve?
I am fine. Spring has finally sprung here in Michigan, and who can't be not happy about that?
Well, Toronto, it had sprung, and now it's kind of hidden because we had hail the other day. Like a lot of hail.
It's been so strange, really. We really haven't had a spring this year.
No, I'm freezing, but it's going to turn nice tomorrow. So there you have it.
Good. We have a serious topic today.
We do. We're talking about domestic violence. And, you know, I've been reading a lot about domestic violence in the media, like more and more. And what troubles me is there's the myths. You know, people say it could never happen to me. Mm-hmm. And I just read a colleague had posted something on Facebook. Now that domestic violence, they're changing the term. Like a lot of them are thinking more of it in terms of family violence. So it just highlights really what domestic violence is. It's not just, it's to families, you know, and what does domestic violence mean? Mm-hmm. It's a pattern of behavior which involves the abuse by one partner against another in an intimate relationship, you know, like, and it's sad because you're in this relationship with someone who you love, and yet they're battering you all over. But
and I'm sorry.
But I was just going to say, it doesn't need to be physical scars. You know, like there's verbal. Physical violence.
Right, verbal too. But when we think of this domestic violence, what do we normally think about? We think about the man violating the woman, don't we?
We do. And, you know, there are women who are perpetrators too. And we're going to ask our guest about that today. But I just want to say that, you know, like there's a lot of emotional scars that people don't talk about. And it's more difficult to prove and difficult for, people to understand. But, you know, I just want to say that additional to that physical violence, like the battering, there's sexual abuse, emotional abuse, controlling and domineering behavior, intimidation, economic deprivation. You know, I was just talking to a lawyer about financial terrorism, you know, and our guest, Penny Krawitz, is the executive director of ACT to End Violence Against Women. And we're going to talk about financial abuse, you know, like that power that your partner has over you. I've heard some horrible stories.
I have too.
You know, so over the years, we'll talk to Penny because she's played a leadership role in identifying the strategic issues facing Jewish women and their families and developing and implementing programs and projects to strengthen their lives, developing culturally sensitive shelters for women in select cities in Canada. But, you know, like the truth is, doesn't matter what culture you are, what religion, what your beliefs are, no one is immune to family violence. You know, you think maybe, you know, you are, but it's something important to think about because it doesn't matter how much money you have, where you live. It's kind of like this dirty little secret that no one is immune.
That's a good point. Remember we had a lady who was, it appeared that she had wealth in her family. And she talked about, like you said, that dirty little secret. A lot of times you think when people are in these rich neighborhoods that they don't suffer violence.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I remember that interview, Sharon Zarozny, whose husband was a surgeon.
Right.
Yeah, so that's a great interview too, and we'll post that link on this one because that is someone who'd been through domestic violence, you know, who's experienced it, and shares her story. And so, Penny?
Mm-hmm.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
And so, you heard our little banter and intro. What constitutes violence against women?
Or
This is my passion in life, to teach people what we mean by that terminology. And let me just say that terminology has many different formats. So in our organization, we call it violence against women as an all-encompassing name for a set of behaviors. Other people call it woman abuse. Other people call it family violence. Other people call it abuse against women. There are many terminologies. It all means the same.
Yeah.
And what does it mean? It means a pattern. First of all, you talked a little bit, Deborah, about the definition. I just want to elaborate on that. The definition, the very, very simple definition that I think can capture people's imagination is that violence against women is a set of behaviors in which one person has control over another person. So if you picture a pendulum never is exactly even, right? It's always moving a little bit. In a healthy relationship, the pendulum goes up and down because perhaps the woman in the relationship is stronger in one area than the man, and then in another area the man is stronger or has more influence. But it's agreed upon behavior. In an abusive relationship, the pendulum is always uneven because and I'm talking about abuse by men against women, which I will get back to in a moment. It's always uneven. So one person has power and control over another. How could that even happen? It's hard to imagine. We have very educated women today, and they hold big positions, or many of them hold big positions. Women have so many more opportunities than they ever did. But the incidence of violence against women does not go down. It doesn't go down. And what constitutes, to go back to the original question, violence against women constitutes everything from emotional, psychological, verbal, financial, sexual, spiritual, and physical abuse. And I say physical abuse at the end of the list very purposely, because no relationship starts off with a man hitting a woman. That is just not the way it works. Violence against women is very, very insidious. It starts slowly, it builds, and it grows. So it generally starts with these emotional, psychological, verbal. And what happens is a man wants to have control over this woman, over her decisions, over her life, over how she thinks, what she says, what she doesn't say. And very often what happens is that they begin this process of eroding self-esteem. So if you picture a stone wall, it's like there's a chisel. He's got a chisel, and he's chiseling away at the wall. He's chiseling away at her self-esteem by all the things he says to her. And again, one could say, how could a woman let that happen to her? Unless you walk in somebody's shoes, first of all, you can't say that. That's a judgment, and we shouldn't ever say that about anyone. But because it's so insidious, it isn't always viewed in a negative way. And women tend to, and people tend to in relationships, make excuses for everybody, especially for those they love. They make excuses for them. There are many, 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 many reasons why abuse happens. But abuse does happen, and it grows and it builds. And even a woman who is incredibly competent in her professional life can be an abused woman at home. It really doesn't change how that happens, because her emotional life and her personal life is very different from her professional life. So, for example, a man can say to a woman, you know, Mary, I really, really love when you wear black. You don't need to wear colors because you're so beautiful that black just enhances your beauty, or some such statement. And the woman thinks to herself, oh my God, he notices what I wear. That's really, really nice. I'm going to listen to him. And listen, sometimes it's true. Maybe she looks better in black, and that's fine.
It's a slimming color.
It's a slimming color, exactly. It's forgiving. But then the next thing is, you know, Mary, you don't need makeup because you're so beautiful. You don't need to cover up the beauty of your face with makeup. And again, standing alone, a woman can be very flattered. And then, you know, Mary, you're so intelligent, but your friend Jane, she's really not a woman that you should be associating with because Jane isn't really that smart. And you're so smart that she really pulls you down. So when I said earlier about a pattern of behaviors, what I was just describing is the beginning of a pattern of behaviors. Each one in and of itself is not necessarily abusive, but when the pattern of behaviors is one in which one person is trying to control the behavior of another, that is when one needs to be alert that there is an abusive relationship going on. One of the huge challenges is that most women, many women, do not even recognize the behaviors as abusive. They think he's difficult, he's hard to please, he has high standards, he's stressed at work, so he comes home and, of course, who's he going to take it out on but me? He didn't get the promotion he deserved. We have money problems. The kids aren't behaving. All kinds of things like that. And they don't even name it. I've spoken to groups and talked about, what abuse looks like, etc. And I've had people say to me after, oh, my God, I'm in an abusive relationship. I didn't even realize it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are, but how do you recognize the difference between being in an abusive relationship and someone who has, he's so frustrated that...
Or control issues, differentiate from control to abuse.
Exactly. And the reality is that a man who's abusive to his partner, he very deliberately chooses who he's going to be abusive to. For the most part, not always, but for the most part, they're not yelling and screaming and putting down the other people in their life. They don't go to work and behave like that. They don't talk to their boss like that. They don't talk to the cab driver like that or whoever else they're involved with. They're not putting these people down and telling them they're stupid and they can't do anything right and they're ugly and they're fat and all the other lovely things that men say to women.
Right. Yeah, and it makes you feel horrible.
But why are they doing it?
Yeah.
They need to have power and control over someone, and the person they choose is the person closest to them, the most intimate relationship in their life.
Why?
Are they...
Pardon me?
Why do they need to have control?
Sometimes it's because of the role models they've had as a child. They've watched their father do the same thing. I mean, very often the research tells us that, not always, but certainly very often, men who are abusive watch that in their lives. Another reason can be a man doesn't have a very strong sense of self. He has a shaky self-esteem, and the only way to build his own self-esteem is to knock somebody else's down.
So why do you think these women stay in these abusive relationships?
Okay, the first thing I'm going to say, Deborah, is that shouldn't be the question. The question should be, the question is not why do women stay, the question is why do men abuse? Because when we say why do women stay, we are re-victimizing the women, which is something that happens, by the way, in our legal system too. They re-victimize the women all the time. But having said that, of course, there are very, very concrete reasons why women stay. Number one reason, money. Women are terrified. It's very expensive to live today. We all know that. Women are terrified they will not have enough money to be able to support themselves and their children.
Yeah.
In many instances, they don't have access to the family funds. They don't even know what they have. There are women who don't even know how much money their husband makes. They don't know if they have any money in the bank. They don't know what their mortgage is. They don't know if they have any debts. They don't have a clue. He gives them X amount of dollars a day, a week, whatever it may be, and she has to account for every penny.
I was just talking to a lawyer, sorry to cut you off, I was just talking to a lawyer about this very topic, about the financial abuse. Mm-hmm. He called it financial terrorism, and I thought that was a really interesting way of looking at it as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So one of the huge, huge reasons is that women are really frightened financially about the possibility of leaving. Another reason that women will stay is because they've been threatened by their partner. If you even think about leaving me, I will have custody of the children. You'll never see them again. Because you're so stupid. If we ever go to court, the judge will see immediately. You can't talk properly. You can't do this. You can't do that. I will tell them all the things you've done over the years, and you will not be a fit parent. You'll never see your children again. And for a woman whose self-esteem has been eroded, she believes this.
Yeah.
Even though it's irrational, she believes it. Another reason that women stay is they don't have, going back to the financial part actually, she doesn't have a skill set. Like, not every woman is educated and has skills to go out in the marketplace. Maybe she hasn't been in the workforce, and she doesn't even know if she'd be able to get a job. The other thing is the community in which a woman lives. There are different kinds of communities that place different levels of value on marriage. And kind of, you made your bed and stay in it, and you have to make the best of it. But there are other communities, and particularly very religious, more right-wing communities of all faiths, where divorce and marriage breakdown is frowned upon very, very much, and women are ostracized from their community if they should even think about leaving, and they talk about a poor marriage. And so that that also helps them to stay, if you will. There are clergy who don't know enough they're not trained enough about violence against women to be able to help, because in many communities, the first person a woman would turn to would be her clergyman.
Mm-hmm.
And so the clergy person says, go home and just do better, be a better wife, keep the house cleaner, keep the children, better behaved, cook better. Everything will be fine. He's stressed now. And they take the side of the man. There are communities where the man is very influential in the synagogue, in the church, whatever it may be. They give lots of money to the community, and nobody wants to rock the boat with that guy.
Yeah.
So the woman doesn't get support. But one of the two top reasons why women stay is money and their children.
Can I just break the topic for 1 second? Just go off topic. We talk about women, but what about men? Are men ever abused? Like, do you see that?
Okay. First of all, let me say this is not my area of expertise.
Okay.
Because this is not the work we do. However, I can tell you that men are abused, but in much, much, much smaller percentages than women. The higher percentage of violence in relationships is from man to woman. The man is the perpetrator.
Yeah. Steve, you look like you want to say something about that.
Well, I've talked to a lot of men that have been abused, and I know that it's very taboo. So a lot of times the numbers are greater than they appear.
Perhaps.
Men don't want to come forward and say that, and especially when it comes to verbal abuse.
As I say, not my area of expertise. But I can understand that, because the social messages that they get from our society are that that would be wimpy for a guy to do that, right? For a man to admit that a woman has power over him, my goodness, that's not the way our society lives.
So can I just go back to the verbal abuse, then the emotional abuse? Mm-hmm. Would people confuse that with, your partner just being mean? Like, he's just a mean guy, never has a positive thing to say. Here's
the thing. If it is agreed upon behavior, or if it's reciprocal behavior, it's not abuse. And there's a fine line. I might observe a relationship and say, to me, that's abusive, because my personality is such I would not put up with that.
Yeah.
But for someone else, if they're giving it back, if the guy is a mean fellow and he always says mean things, and you look at your partner, and the woman is able to look at her partner and say, I don't know why you're such a mean SOB. You just never can say anything positive. What is wrong with you? That isn't necessarily an abusive relationship, because she's not being put down. She is meeting him, if you will, and confronting him about what he is saying. It's the woman who is put down and who can't say anything, who's been frightened into not saying anything. Many women who have been abused, they talk about feeling that their life is one of walking on eggshells. So you know what that means. It means a woman who's afraid to do anything, afraid to say anything, because it will irritate him to the degree that the abuse just goes over the top. And it doesn't matter if the kids are around, they're not around. These are the things that happen, and they become incensed.
And I read something, some research on children who witness parents, their mother being abused, and that's just as abusive to children, witnessing the abuse. I was just wondering if you had some research on.
I don't have numbers in front of me, but what I can tell you is the research. The result of the research is that children who witness abuse, and the word witness means know it is happening. It doesn't mean it's happening to them directly.
Yeah.
They are as profoundly affected by it as the women who are actually being abused. And many women think their children do not know what's going on because it happens when they're in bed, or, they think that the kids don't get it, if you will. Children know.
Children are far more smart.
Smarter. It's very interesting. I just had a woman in my office. She just left just as the phone rang. And she was telling me that she was a product of an abusive family when she was a child. Her father was very, very emotionally abusive to her mother. And she knew at the age of, when she was 5 years old, her parents split up. And then when she was 7.5, they went back together. And she despaired of her mother going back with her father because she knew it would never change. I mean, I'm quite amazed at how she was so aware at that age. But she swears it's not retrospect. She says she remembers all of those feelings and how horrible it was for her and her brother to hear her father berating her mother on a regular basis.
Okay,
and her mother not responding.
Okay, so this is really interesting. So this is a client of yours now. So this woman is in an abused relationship herself.
No. This woman wants to volunteer with our organization. But she was telling me a little bit about her background and her connection to abuse. She has been she's married and she says she's not in an abusive relationship.
Okay, but it sort of like goes back to what I was going to say, though. How many people who grew up in these abusive homes actually become abused themselves? Because that's
many.
Yeah.
That's the behavior. That's their normal. That is their normal. This woman is quite unique in that she recognized that it wasn't normal behavior.
Or they become the abuser.
I'm sorry?
Or they can become the abuser.
Exactly. They can become the abuser because that's the role model they have, and or they become abused because that again is their normal and the role model that they saw.
So I don't know if this is a myth and stereotype. Just correct me if I'm wrong. So would it be more likely then that the boys become abusers and the girls become abused because that's what they see, like the male-female roles?
More frequently than not, but as Steve has said, there's definitely an underreporting by men. We know that.
Yeah. What about bullying at school? Like, do you think it starts there?
Absolutely. You know what a bully is? An abuser. It's just another word. And really that word, the word is a problem in and of itself because it implies lesser important behavior. Even though bullying is not acceptable behavior, it doesn't sound as bad as being an abuser, right? But very often, bullies schoolyard bullies grow up to be abusing men. They grow up to be abusers because that's what it is. It's a pattern of behaviors that you need to have power over another person or other persons.
Yeah. So what are some of the myths and stereotypes about violence against women?
Well, you referred to one earlier where you said that it doesn't matter how rich or poor you are. Violence against women is not a feature of poor education. It has no socioeconomic boundaries. It is not only for alcoholics or drug abusers. It knows, the bottom line is that it knows no boundaries. It doesn't matter how religious you are or how secular you are. It doesn't matter how much education you have or how little education you have. It doesn't matter how much money you have in the bank or how little money you have in the bank. Violence against women can happen to anyone. And so the image that people have is that violence against women only means the woman with a broken arm and a black eye. You picture the physical effect. Violence against women in terms of physical violence only happens to a very, very small percentage of women who are in abusive relationships because the physical violence is an escalation of all the other kinds of violence that have occurred in the relationship. Another myth is that violence against women affects only a small percentage of the population and is rare. Well, we know 1 in 4 women suffers from abuse.
It's huge.
That's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people.
Think of a room full of women. Think of a small room full of women. There are women in that room who have been abused or will be abused. As I referred to earlier, drugs, alcohol, stress, mental illness, they do not cause men to assault their partners. It can cause all kinds of problems in relationships, but it doesn't cause them to become abusive. Another myth is that if abuse isn't physical, it isn't so serious. And I have women say to me, well, he didn't hit me. I say, yeah. And does that mean it's good? Does that mean it's okay, the other behaviors? He didn't hit me? Because it's apparent. As I said earlier, the other kinds of abuse, some of them are hidden. The particularly sexual abuse is very hidden. And even the other kinds are hidden because you make excuses for people and cover it up. And they aren't concrete. But when you see the woman who has a broken arm or a black eye or any of those, or bruises all over her body that are extremely difficult to explain, then it looks more serious. Another myth is that emotional abuse is less threatening or intimidating to the victim than physical attack. Well, a social worker that I know says it very succinctly. She says, emotional abuse damages the soul forever. Physical abuse heals. That does not mean it's pleasant to be physically abused, don't get me wrong. But your very soul is damaged by the emotional abuse and the put-downs and the erosion of your self-esteem. Another myth is that pushing, shoving, or throwing objects are not really considered violence against women. People think that physical violence is only constituted by a man actually touching a woman physically in a way that is violent. That isn't true. He could he could take a favorite object that she loves in the home and throw it on the ground and break it. He could threaten a family pet or kill a family pet. This happens very often. Bang a hole in the wall, et cetera, et cetera. Another myth, it takes two to tango. People say if the abused woman would just try harder and not provoke her partner, the abuse would stop. Not true. The abuse doesn't stop. Abusers are generally unpleasant or angry people. Now, we don't have too many profiles of abusers, but one word that comes up time and time and time again is that abusers are generally very charming people. They are very charming to the outside world. So then, when
so scary,
it's very scary. But not all charmers are abusers. Don't get me wrong.
No,
I know. And not all men are abusers. I don't want anybody listening to this to think that in any way, shape, or form. However, we do find that is another barrier for women to talk about it, because people say, "But he's so lovely. How could he be doing that at home?" Like, it sounds like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And I think, do you find, like, when people date someone, they're just courting them, that behavior doesn't show itself. And it's only once the relationship becomes a little bit more solid that they let their barriers down?
There are red flags. Every woman I've spoken to who has left an abusive relationship after being in it for a number of years, and I ask the question, do you, in retrospect, not then, but in retrospect, do you recognize anything? She said, absolutely. Everyone. Every single one. But they look at it, instead of looking at it as a means of control and a pattern of behaviors to control her, they were in the honeymoon stage, right? In the la-la, everything's wonderful stage. Yeah. And they looked at it as a compliment, as I mentioned earlier.
Right.
You look beautiful this way, you look beautiful that way, don't be friends with this one. And so it was looked at, he loves me so much. One young girl talked about, when she was dating, her boyfriend bought her a cell phone. This is a few years ago when cell phones weren't as prolific as they are today. He bought her a cell phone, and she thought, oh my God, he loves me so much that he bought me this gift, first of all, and secondly, he wants to be able to be in touch with me. But it became what she called her electronic chain, because he was calling her constantly, where are you, or texting her. She couldn't do anything. She was just chained to this electronic device. So the answer to your question is there's absolutely red flags.
And what about extreme jealousy? Would that be seen as abuse too?
On its own? No.
Well, like I was just reading about this woman that was murdered in New York, this bathing suit designer, I can't remember her name. She was murdered by her boyfriend, who happened to be really extremely jealous of her. Now, I mean, that is really to the extreme.
That's to the extreme, and we don't know all the information.
Yeah.
I think you can't take it out of context. I would suspect that the relationship was very controlling, because if he was that jealous of her, he tried to control all of her movements, all of her other relationships, all of her activities. I don't know the information, but I would suspect that jealousy alone, depending on the degree, isn't necessarily, there's nothing that's a sign of abuse. Because a guy can be jealous as anything, and you can say to him, you're an idiot. What are you so jealous of? I'm with you. True. I love you.
That's true. Tell me a little bit more about Act 10 violence against women.
Okay. Our organization has had a number of iterations in its life, and we've been working on the issue of violence against women since the mid-1980s, where we recognized it as an emerging issue in terms of becoming part of the public domain. And our work is to educate, advocate, and take action on violence against women. We are not a social service agency. We do not have social workers on staff or lawyers on staff, but we try to identify ways that we can educate people of all ages about the issue of abuse, because I think that is one of the most important things. Most women can't name the behavior, and that's what we are working to help people. Just as we're doing now, an interview such as this is part of that educational process. And we do a lot of work around education in a variety of ways. We recently opened a legal information service for women who have experienced abuse, understanding that the legal system is extremely intricate and difficult for women to navigate, providing resources, information, knowledge, and emotional support. Many women today, in Ontario particularly, cannot afford a lawyer. And legal aid is out of reach for many people because of a wide variety of reasons. And so we help a woman to take all the pieces that she needs to take to get herself into court, to get what her and to understand what her rights and responsibilities are, and to work through the process. It's very difficult. It's very onerous. It's very emotionally depleting. One of the other factors is that because of the extreme cost, more and more women, 65% of women, are now self-representing, which is a huge, huge problem. And the men are self-representing not always because they can't afford it, but because this is a way for them to for them to continue to have power and control over the woman.
Do you find that the courts sometimes are a little bit more sensitive to the abuser? Like they don't believe they're getting better.
They're getting better about understanding the issue of abuse, because the issue of abuse is very different than just a regular divorce.
Yeah. And I'm just saying because some of these guys come across as being so charming. So
exactly. And sometimes they get away with it. And sometimes I recently heard of a case where the guy was self-representing, and they're very manipulative people. So he was going on and on and on, and the judge finally looked at him and he said, the next time you come back to your court, if you're going to behave and talk in the same way, bring your toothbrush because you know exactly where you're going.
Yeah,
I was so excited to hear that.
Yeah,
because this judge really got it. He saw through this guy, and he saw what he was doing and what games he was playing and how he was trying to intimidate his former wife, or his soon-to-be former wife, and frighten her as he had done during their marriage. But now he was doing it publicly.
So, Penny, we have listeners worldwide. Not everybody has the benefit of being in Toronto and able to come to your, to come to your facility. Mm-hmm. What do you tell these women who are being abused? What should they do? What are the top 5 steps?
The first thing they have to do is name it.
Mm-hmm.
They have to look at it. They have to look inside of themselves, and they have to say. I always say to people, if you're in your gut, it doesn't feel good. It usually isn't.
Yeah.
Listen to yourself, trust yourself, and it's really hard to do that when you're in this kind of emotional turmoil. If you think you are being abused, the first thing one should do, there are many things to do, and it depends on the level of the safety issues in the relationship. So I don't want to be general. It's hard to be general. A woman who fears for her safety and security and that of her children in terms of the physical harm, a husband who might have guns or knives or something of that nature, one of the things we tell people is very quietly, make sure that important papers, your children's birth certificates, your house deed, your car loan, whatever, your bank stuff, is somewhere safe. Give it to a friend, give it to a family member. If you have access to any money, start putting some money away in a bank account in your own name. Tell somebody what's happening. Get some counseling. If you lie to your husband, tell him whatever you have to tell him so that you can go for a counseling session, so you can begin to understand more of what's happening to you. Many women don't even understand it. How did I allow this to happen to myself? How did I get to this point? Learn from the professionals, any agency dealing with this issue. What are the resources out there to help me? I know in Ontario, if a woman who comes out of a domestic violence situation doesn't have housing, even though we have a very long list of subsidized housing, people waiting for subsidized housing, like it's about a 13-year list to get in subsidized housing in Ontario, an abused woman goes right to the top of the list. Right to the top of the list.
That's great.
But she might not know that unless she's with a professional who could direct her that way. And she'll get an apartment within 6 months.
So what about going to one of these versus a shelter? What's the difference?
I'm sorry?
The shelter. So if you could just explain the difference between going to subsidized housing versus going to a shelter.
Everybody has different needs. Some women need what I call the respite of going into a shelter, a time to think clearly, and they still have a lot of support around them, and that works for them. Some women go to a shelter because they need to for their safety and security, and it's too dangerous for them to stay in the family home.
Yeah.
Some women recognize that they indeed have been abused. They do not want to live in this relationship anymore. They're getting some help. They got on the housing list. They move into an apartment. They're still emotionally not healthy, but they've taken that step. And they come out into the community, and our organization actually does support women who've done that, who have not been in a shelter situation, but have come out into the community, sometimes for the first time, and really just need some emotional support and somebody to help them just get through the first few months.
That's great. I think that's really helpful. And then I guess, just the practical things, if you are researching this online, that you get rid of the cookies.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Be very, very, very careful about anything you leave on your computer, because he could track it. And if he wants power and control over you, he probably is looking at where you've been on your computer. If you have a cell phone, delete your messages, delete all your text things and the phone numbers that you've called, the phone numbers you've received. Be very, very, very careful so you can't be tracked.
At what point do you suggest a woman seek a protection order?
When there's a threat of physical violence, harm. And every case is different. The thing about violence against women, I'm not trying to avoid the question at all, but the thing about violence against women is it's very, very, very complex, and there are many, many, many layers to it. And so for one woman might be seeking a protective order, might not be for another woman. So the ultimate, of course, is the threat of physical violence, the guns and knives, as I mentioned before, or the beating up or that kind of thing. But for another woman, threatening the children might be enough. For some women, the breaking point is when the abuse is directed at the children as well.
Mm-hmm.
And he might say, if you don't get better marks in school, watch out. Well, a woman is like a bear. She in order to protect her children, and that could be enough for a woman.
You've got a really wonderful website. I'm on it now, and what I mentioned
sorry?
about.
I didn't hear you.
You've got a really wonderful website.
Thank you. I hope that people will go on it and learn more about the issue.
And the website is VAW.org. I'll have that on the liner notes. But ACT2EndVAW.org. And what I like is that you've got right at the very top, cover your tracks, exit now. I think that was a really good tip sheet. Can you just take us through some of the information that's on your website?
I will call it up in front of me because I haven't looked at it this week and I could forget. What we tried to do on our website was provide education, again, because that's one of the things in our mission that we do is to provide education, as well as resources. We have a big, big resource area. And of course, now I can't call up my website. Don't ask me why. We have a resource area. We have some of the programs that we actually are doing right now. Call to action in terms of volunteers or things that people can do. Just let me get in here. Here I am.
And so what I like about your resource page is that even if you don't live in Toronto or Ontario, I think that there's some really good words here that you might be able to Google so that you can find those resources wherever you are.
Let me just say that, just for your listeners, VAW is a terminology that's used in the sector, and it stands for Violence Against Women. So just so you know, the short form VAW. So on our website, on our homepage, one of the tabs that you can use it says Violence Against Women. And all of the subheadings are all about violence against women. So this is a really good resource section. VAW definition, so Violence Against Women definition. VAW warning signs of an abuser. VAW risk assessment. VAW, if you are abused, what to do. VAW myths and facts. VAW more facts. VAW sexual assault on campus, which is a whole other discussion. VAW resources, and then we subdivided the resources into legal resources. So there's a lot of information about violence against women that one can access through our website. Again. And it's all women of all ages. That's the other thing that is very important. People think that, it doesn't happen to older women. It does happen to older women. And sometimes older women will say, we once had a lady, she was about 70 years old, and she came to us and she said, I've lived like this all my life with him. I don't have, I know I'm at the end of my life now. I don't want to live like this anymore. And she left him. And we supported her leaving him. She came to our shelter. But we were so amazed that somebody could have the fortitude and the strength to do that at that stage of life. That's really scary.
It is, but good for her.
Mm-hmm.
Good for her.
You asked me a question before, what to do if you are abused. So on our website, there is a section for that, and I'm just going to quote from it a little bit because it's really important. One of the key things it says, if you are abused, you are not alone and you are not to blame. You cannot control his violence. Call the police if you've been assaulted. Tell someone. Keep a record of all incidents. Write down the details and keep them in a safe place, develop a safety plan, have emergency numbers at your fingertips. I mentioned earlier, keep spare house and car keys, passports for yourself and your children, birth certificates, immigration or settlement documents, health cards, etc., in a place where they're safe. Know where you could go in an emergency. Consider ending the relationship as soon as possible because his violence could increase. Recognize no one has the right to control you and everyone has a human right to live without fear. A couple of other things I want to mention. Women who are immigrants to, whether it's Canada or the United States, are at particular risk because one of the very big threats is you will get deported because you're only here because of me and I will have the children forever. Or I will take the children back to our home country and you'll never see them again. Immigrants, and they also don't understand our world and they don't understand our laws, etc., like that, etc. So that's a really, really important thing, that women who are immigrants really have a big, huge problem, a bigger problem even than women who are born in Canada or the United States. Another piece that's important that I didn't mention is when a woman has left a relationship or is preparing to leave a relationship, she subconsciously becomes stronger. And this actually escalates his abuse because he feels it and sees his power being eroded, and he hates it. And it makes that the highest risk time for a woman is when she leaves, when she first leaves.
You see that in high conflict relationships, like, high conflict divorce, where when someone chooses not to engage, and I'm not necessarily saying it's abusive, but when one chooses not to engage anymore, it's almost like there's this knee-jerk reaction where from the other side, it gets worse because they're trying to continually pull you in to the conflict. So, and I guess that's the same thing as being, abusive.
Absolutely. Men who want to be in control want to be in control. And when they see they're losing control, they hate it.
Well, this has certainly been insightful, Penny. Thank you so much. Do you want to just tell us again how people can get in touch with you and view your organization?
Yeah, you can go to our website, www.actact, another T, OENDVAW.org, or you can call us at 905-695-5372, or at our 1-800 number that I can't remember. Isn't that terrible? I don't use that, of course. What is our 1-800 number?
It's 1-866-333-5942.
Here it is, yeah. So that's the way you can get in touch with us, and we are committed to education, action, and advocacy to end violence against women. And we thank you for your work in promoting this.
Thank you. Well, I think what you're doing is really wonderful. And again, for our listeners, even if you're not in Toronto or Ontario, if you're not in Canada, I think this is just a really wonderful educational website. It's got some great resources and help, in every way to think about what you need to do. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Steve.
You're welcome. Good talking to you.
Good talking to you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
It is an important topic, and, I always want to beat that drum that guys are involved in this too. And it seems that all the shows we ever talk about is violence against women.
It's true. And I have heard of situations. Now, it's interesting because I do know women that have been abused. I don't know of any men. Now, it could be that they're not
how many
saying...
come forward? Yeah, how many come forward? How many guys are berated? You're not bringing home enough money. You're not successful. You're not this. You're not that. It is verbal abuse towards a man. And a lot of women hit their men. But, of course, the men aren't really hurt by it.
Yeah, so certainly something we should talk about in another show.
Absolutely, Deborah. Let's be well-rounded here.
We will. I promise to bring on a guest.
But real quick, what did you think about the definitions that she spoke of? And you even asked a question about them. Like, at what point, how do you differentiate between a guy that may be just an ass and somebody that's really trying to be abusive towards the woman? Well,
I think that Penny really raised some thought-provoking conversations here. And that is, the control. It could be someone is an asshole. They're just not a very nice person. But if you are in that relationship, and what did Penny say? Something about the conversation. Both of you, like that sort of like accepted behavior, where not so much as what's the word I'm looking for? Senior's moment here. But, like this is a behavior that is causing you to lose control over your life. They're not letting you have friendships, that long-lasting friendships, and I'm not saying encouraging, I'm telling you not to have relationships with family, friends, everything else. That's a huge shift in behavior.
When you're trying to draw someone away, is that what you mean? Into your little fold? Yeah, I agree with you there. But what about the scenario where you look good in black? So why not wear black? I mean, have you ever told your boyfriend that you like him in something or don't like him in something? Have you ever suggested that he maybe do something this way instead of that way?
Yeah, and it happens like in all, in many of my relationships and my, my friendships and in my relationship and even in my relationship with kids, but it's not abusive.
Well, that's my point.
I'm not doing it to hurt somebody. Like, of course, my daughter, we'll joke, and my daughter has red hair, so she will never wear something that's red because we say that color doesn't look good on you, right? That's not abusive. It's constructive criticism.
But how do you know?
Right?
How do you know? For someone with low self-esteem, that may really bother, that could be abusive to them.
But I can see what you're saying, but if you can't speak up for yourself, and if it happens over and over and over again, so, like somebody might say something mean to you once and never again, I don't think that necessarily constitutes an abusive relationship. I think, and I could be wrong, and I we don't have Penny here to talk to about this, but if it's continuing, if it really diminishes your self-esteem, if it's making you feel worse and worse about yourself, emotional abuse is one thing. Like, I love their comment on emotional abuse touching the soul. There is one thing about physical abuse, and you do see the scars. But with emotional abuse, you've got these emotional scars that are there for many people for forever. The physical scars do heal. But, emotionally, it is really, it's horrible.
I agree.
And what that translates into in terms of the way you feel about yourself and your other relationships, and you begin to self-doubt.
But I do recall a divorce coach that I spoke with on the air a couple of years ago that said that even in a violent situation, that there's not just one partner to blame. And she said because the person that's being violated could walk away. And I said, wow, you're not going to win any fans on that statement. Because I thought if someone is being violent towards you, that maybe you don't control that situation. But she was saying you can always still make the choice to walk away. You had that choice.
That's true. People do have choices. But if someone is really, chipping away at your sense of self-esteem, and you feel you have nowhere to go and no one's ever going to love me, and, it's that strength of character. Like, not everybody has that. And I'm sort of flabbergasted. I don't think you can blame someone for being abused. You can't. And, and there are different forms of abuse.
But can you blame them for not walking away? That's what the divorce coach was saying. I kind of agree with Penny, because this is something that erodes over time.
Well, that's it. And, I wonder if you don't see it happening. So you fall into these patterns.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I mean, it's very, really, it's very, very complicated. And I remember, I met Penny not that long ago, and we talked about, because I wanted to support many of the women coming into her office. And, that's one of the things we talked about is, like, I don't understand why they don't walk away, right? I just, if you are battered, like how is it that women stay being physically abused? But I think until you walk in those shoes, you can't understand.
Right.
Like, you really can't understand. There's so many reasons. And I think that that's one thing, is that there's no typical profile.
You're right. But an important show for women who want more information. Again, on Penny, the website is act2ndvaw.org. And Deborah, what's going on with you in the Smart Divorce these days?
Oh, it is busy beyond. Not only am I planning some more fabulous shows on the Smart Divorce on Divorce Source Radio, coaching people all across North America, leading them towards more positive outcomes for a happier and healthier future. I was talking to a lawyer today, and we were talking about how I can support their clients. Because, once their files are closed, individuals are left with decisions that they made during the most emotional time in their life, when they're probably least likely to make those, least able to make those decisions. I mean, you can imagine, like, you're so emotionally distraught. We were both there ourselves. And you make these decisions based sometimes on how you're feeling at the time, not really in what's in your best interest. So it's really empowering for me to work with individuals, to work with my clients, to show them that the way that they're thinking today is not how they're going to think, in 5 years from now, and to ask lots of questions now to empower them with information and resources so that they can move on positively post-divorce. There's this huge ripple effect of divorce in society, and let's start making a difference today, and how people can manage outcomes, for a happier future. Mm-hmm. So
and
it's great.
For the information on you, should our listeners want to get more and maybe have a consultation session, how do they get a hold of you?
Call me at 905-695-0270. Email me at info@thesmartdivorce.com, or, me personally at Deborah@thesmartdivorce.com. Of course, I always look at info@thesmartdivorce.com. Not everybody knows how to spell my name, DEBORAH. But, please visit my website at www.thesmartdivorce.com, because you can also see the resources I offer, which is the Smart Divorce Toolkit and my book, The Smart Divorce, which started it all. And there are different events and programs that I can help guide you.
All right. TheSmartDivorce.com. Go there. Thanks, Deb. Always great talking to you. I look forward to our next show.
I've got lots planned.
All right. We'll see you.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
As always, I hope the program helped you. If you have a comment or question you'd like to ask us, we'd love to hear from you. You can leave us a voicemail on our listener line at area code 248-686-2256. Or drop us an email with your question or comment to divorcesourceradio@gmail.com. New programs are available every week on divorcesourceradio.com, as well as iTunes, BlackBerry, Stitcher, and all over the web. If you'd like to be notified when new programs are available, you can follow us on Twitter. Our follow word is Divorce Source. Also, if you're not listening from our website, I invite you to stop by divorcesourceradio.com, where you'll find a complete program archive. If you're looking for a specific subject, simply type it into our search engine, and chances are you'll find what you're looking for. We also have other resources available at our website as well. And while you're on our website, click on the Facebook icon and join the growing Divorce Source Radio Facebook community. Thanks for listening. Until next time, make it a great week and stay healthy. I'm Steve Peck.